Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to your Lunch Break Live. My name is Ivana. If you are new here, if you're not, thank you so much for coming back. Today is Wednesday, March the 10th, and I've got a very special guest today. I've been talking to Mr. Avery before we got started, and he is fascinating. I cannot wait for all of you to hear his story. But this is Jason Avery. He is a UAB clinical trial director, and if you have been keeping up with our Voices of the Pandemic series on AL.com, you might have read his story yesterday. We highlighted business owners. So Mr. Avery, again, he works for UAB as a clinical trial director, but during the pandemic, he got a little bit busier. He decided to start a business. He has lost 40 pounds during the pandemic and also done a whole range of other charitable work and other community work as well. So Jason, I have so many questions for you, but first of all, you have used this pandemic to stay a very busy man.
Absolutely. I mean, there are many rare times and instances that you get a chance to sort of slow down from that everyday, life that you are accustomed to and sort of reevaluate what you wanted to do with your life. And I know that one thing I didn't want to do was stay locked up inside the house when my social, fabric had been sort of taken away. So one of the things that I did was decided to get out and go walking. I mean, what a better way to have some sort of like non-mask restricted outdoor playtime. There weren't a lot of people. I mean, I was walking up First Avenue North, and you know how busy that street is. And I was the only person in the street. And so that sort of turned me on my fitness journey, and I sort of contacted a trainer, Curtis Starks from Train and Burn, asked him what he could do with this old man right here. And he said, I think we can do something during the pandemic. I was super stoked about him because he was one of the people that pivoted towards the online training at first until we were allowed to go back into facilities. And that actually gave me this sort of ability to sort of slowly ramp it up before I went in full time. But, after that, all those 53 weeks so far, I managed to lose over 40 pounds, and I'm super excited. So, I come out of this cocoon a little bit lighter than I went into it.
I think it is so cool that you decided to do this, number one. But number two, there's a lot of us who decided to, when we needed to work out at home, we said, let's buy a YouTube membership or a Beachbody membership, do it online. Let's buy a Peloton, other things. I'm guilty of some of those. But you decided to do it locally. You got with a local trainer, you did it. And I know you said it started out online, but I can imagine as somebody who is just getting into, your fitness journey, that it took a lot of self-discipline to do that virtually.
Yeah, it really did. But I have such a great, web of friends around that are watching you and making sure that you're doing your things. And, we all got so used to communicating with each other via Zoom or via FaceTime that it just seemed sort of like the next step. Everybody's used to watching those old Richard Simmons episodes on television, so it's training from a screen. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of advantages, I think, to doing things locally. Walking is so underrated as an exercise. I mean, one thing, not only was I able to get out in the fresh air and move and get some excitement going, I was able to really learn my community. I've talked to you about a lot of my work here in Woodlawn. I mean, Woodlawn's a very walkable community. And you actually see things differently when you get out on the street level. You actually get to meet people. You get to meet the business owners. You get to meet the residents. You get to meet the transients. You get to meet everybody out there because they all come up and make the fabric of, our community. So that was a truly, truly big advantage that I saw from, doing this locally. I didn't want to have this sort of microcosm that I never went out, but I did choose some barriers and try to construct a life that was as COVID safe as possible without, giving up everything.
Well, and that's another thing is you work in public health, you're a clinical trial director, and I think your work
Yes.
focuses on strokes
Yes.
specifically, but you're working in the public health sector. I know you were working at home, but you had that knowledge of being in public health that said, this is a serious situation. This is a pandemic. We're not going to emerge from this in 2 weeks, as I
Right.
think a lot of us wanted to believe, myself
Right.
included. So you knew we were in for something that was serious. And that I have to wonder, did that thought really trigger you to say, look, I got to keep busy or I'm going to go crazy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely an advantage of having a public health background. My ex-spouse had a public health background. I got my degree from the School of Public Health. I actually now work in epidemiology, and those are the specialists that you look for epidemics and pandemics. I from the very beginning, I saw that the pandemic was basically being shaped into a political issue or maybe an issue of business versus health. And that actually frustrates me sometimes because during this pandemic, there have been a lot of people who have become epidemiologists with no training. So yeah, I knew, or at least had a heavy, suspicion of where we were going, and it wasn't going to be 2 weeks. I remember the last time I was in the office was March 16th of 2020. I was looking at and talking to the chair of our department of epidemiology, and she said, well, we're going to be out for 2 weeks, but to expect that it's going to be a lot longer than that. And it's just funny to think that in 6 days from today, it will be a year that we have worked remotely. And I've literally only been back in the office for 3 times. But yeah, I knew that one of the things about being sort of having your routine just disrupted like that is now people feel that they're stuck. I had to come up with ways to sort of make my life somewhat normal, but also keep it safe at the same time. That if that means if I talk to my best friend 10 times a day in person, now we're only seeing each other 5 times a day via FaceTime. So you have to adjust. Pandemics are real, disease is real. You can't politicize it. You just have to do what's good for you and good for other people around you.
I think that it's so interesting you going into it kind of knowing, look, we're into this when, like I said, you can be somebody not in public health. I think March 12th was my last day in the office, just 2 days from now. And I didn't even grab anything. I think I grabbed my laptop and like a pen, and I was like, oh, I'll be right back. No problem. We all unfortunately learned from there. But on top of you going home, you're working at home, you were beginning your fitness journey. At some point in the last year, you also found time to start a business. I can
Absolutely.
imagine, I've never started a business. I can imagine that is difficult any time of the year, let alone during a pandemic. So tell me how that worked.
So it actually just sprung from some volunteer work that I was doing with Rev Birmingham. They are here in Woodlawn. So like I said, I love to keep it local. They're about a block away from me. I started working with their Urban Maine initiative, which is an initiative that comes from Main Street, Alabama, and the National Main Street. So basically what we're trying to do is make all the sort of older city centers vibrant again, make them vibrant places for people to live, vibrant places for people to shop. So I started doing some volunteer work with them on a design aspect. So we would go around to different legacy businesses and sort of give them facelifts, and whether paint a mural, paint the building, do small things like that. A lot of people said a lipstick on a pig, but I don't really believe that. I just think that changing the appearance can change the outlook of even the business owners that are currently in there. And you want to, in a neighborhood where you have so much change and so much flux, you want to make sure that everybody has a seat at the table. So anything that you can do to invest in those businesses that kept you there for the last 25 years versus, and still support the new businesses that are coming in as well. So getting involved with all those businesses, I discovered, hey, I've got some things that I can do. I love sort of lifestyle journals, bookings, stuff like that. So I live in a cottage in Woodlawn that was built in 1907, and it's in a nice old house. I absolutely love it. So what would happen is I had lots of people coming here for entertainment purposes, parties, and they would always say to me, I don't know what it is about being here, but if you can just sort of bottle that and turn it into a product or a service, we would buy it. So, of course, that means nothing. You're like, what does that mean? So what I came up with was I looked at, what people thought made my space special. They said, number one, it was my house. They said they feel like they can be fashionable when they come here. They get good food, they get good drinks, they hear good music. So I was like, that is what it needs to be. So I am searching for the intersection of food, drink, fashion, and the name of my business is Cottage Noir, and it's because it stands for Black Cottage, and my house is painted black and with the famous yellow door that highlights the whole thing. But during the last couple of years, I've managed to really grow it. I've had several online happy hours. We did it for a couple of the COVID relief business relief programs that the city of Birmingham did. I also did an online happy hour for the Woodlawn Sunday Dinner, which is a yearly event that's put on by the Woodlawn Foundation. And sorry, you're going to hear my train in the background. That's another thing about living in Woodlawn. There's always a train going by. But I'm most excited about the earring line that I got to start. So Woodlawn Jewelry Company happens to be my neighbor, is a great, just a fascinating jewelry company that is local. Check her out, Woodlawn Jewelry Co. on Instagram. So I came to her, and one of the things that I've always had a problem finding are earrings for men. I've had my ears pierced for a very long time. And so I asked her if she was interested in coming up with a line of men's earrings. She thought it was a great idea. So there's some right there. They're just small studs. They represent just different elements that you can find in Cottage Noir: stone, wood, colors of black. We're working on a couple of other things as well. But I was able to get this line developed with Angela of Woodlawn Company, and we were able to have our first street market where I went and sold these earrings and was surprised at how well they sold. And even though it was originally thought of as a men's line, a lot of females ended up buying them because these earrings were still stylish enough, but did not interfere with their actual man. So those earrings became sort of like a COVID safe activity as well. So yeah, that's
Well,
where we are with Cottage Noir.
I think everybody who watches me knows I have to have a big earring. There's nothing that stops me from that. But you're so right with the masks. It's a mess. They fall,
Yeah.
they go everywhere. So great idea. But let me ask you something that I think a lot of people will wonder. You did these virtual happy hours, you
Mhm.
did these Zoom meetings, but Cottage Noir is also a brick and mortar store.
Well, it is a brick and mortar place. So we are actually working on right now, and so that's our big announcement for the next year. We are looking at actually becoming a brick and mortar, and so now we're looking at what that will become. Over the last year, Cottage Noir has been many things. There's a food component, so we focus on Indian cuisine. I've always loved Indian cuisine. I spent weeks back in London about 6 years ago, where I spent the entire time taking classes and learning how to actually do that. And so it could become a brick and mortar that serves Indian cuisine. It could become a store of curated products, but we are working on that right now. I've got my business coach Alicia's levels more, and she's really good at everything that she does. And so hopefully you'll be hearing shortly about that brick and mortar.
You again, I don't think there's anything that you necessarily didn't do during the pandemic. It didn't stop you, that's for sure. But
Right.
something that I think is interesting that you mentioned in your story, we've got a link here in the comments too if anybody wants to read that on our website at AL.com. I think it's interesting. You made a point where you said that you had, quote, time to get to know yourself
Oh,
again.
yeah.
And I think that was an interesting concept, and I wanted to ask you about that.
Okay, so yeah, before the pandemic, life had almost become just way too routine for me. You go to work, you go out to dinner, you may go have a drink or something before that, you come back, you start thinking about work the next day. So you can kind of lose yourself in that routine. You all of a sudden, we're now in a time where I'm sitting in my house and there's not someone asking so much stuff of me all the time. I'm having time to actually not be around other people and absorb their stories, but actually getting time to really think about my own story, where, also sitting here watching the news, and everybody knows about all of the events, the pivotal events of 2020, whether it be from police brutality, those sort of shooting of unarmed Black men, the pandemic, just all these sort of issues of people that are getting worse and worse, that topped with the deaths. It just is a time that I think that everyone should have just sat and reevaluated, what is the world going forward? What is my place in it? Also to say, you know what? I've had a lot of successes. And I think that's why I do a lot, right? I try to keep myself busy because something's going to stick. So I think the more that you do, the more chance that you have at success. You're going to have a few failures too, but you're going to have a chance at success. I think I said in my piece, optimist. I'm a little bit of an optimist wrapped in a perceived pessimist, but I'm an optimist at heart. And so I always think that everything is going to work out. And sometimes it doesn't. But, I think getting that time alone to truly meditate and, just spending time with yourself is, a lot of people, I think don't know who they are. I didn't want to emerge from this pandemic and go back and not know who I was. And I didn't want to go back necessarily and be the same person that I was, because everyone should have changed.
Great advice, Jason. Great advice here, and great reflection too that I think we can all sit here and think about. So we've got a lot of fans of yours in the comments, and they're proud of you. And we've got somebody saying that they knew you 30 years ago and knew you were going to go far. So, Jason, tell us how people can keep up with you, how they can keep up with Cottage Noir.
Okay, so cool. You can just, if you want, I'm on Facebook, just the normal platforms. Jason Avery on Facebook. Hit me up. I'll friend you. I'm always doing something on there. If you want to follow Cottage Noir, I'm on Instagram. It's at Cottage Noir 149. So that's at COTTAGENOIR 149. And you can always follow me there. I try to put interesting content there every day. I know that the people who are following me are waiting to see what I did with those leftovers from those ribeye steaks this weekend. Let me give you a spoiler. There were no leftovers.
I don't know what that word means. There's never those in my house either. So, Jason, thank you so much. This has been a treat. I think that, again, judging by the comments, you are a popular man, which I knew already. So
that's
Jason,
very nice.
Thank you so much for all this info. Everybody, you can follow Jason on those places he just mentioned. And again, you can read his story on AL.com, link in these comments. So, Jason, thanks again. Everybody watching.